We are now talking to creator of MLB Daily Dingers and Elite Sports New York writer and editor, Matt Musico. Matt, what's up, man?
That was a wonderful intro. Thank you so much. What's up, fellas?
I have been sticking up for the Mets even when they lost against the Padres because I feel bad for the organization because they had such a great season. It just so happens they're in a division where the Braves are just fantastic from top to bottom. They have one of the best farm systems in baseball. They have one of the best GMs in sports. I mean, everything that they do is just perfectly straight line. And the New York Mets, I have to give them credit for a team that won, 76, 77 games last year to win 101 games the next year. With some of the acquisitions they made, and Marte was a good get. I mean, obviously Lindor actually had a good season finally, and some of their players started to spark. Pete Alonso again has a fantastic year. I think that the Mets' future is bright. I don't think it is as bad as what Met fans think, and they have a lot of work to do. I don't think they do. I think they one move in the lineup, maybe some pitchers in the bullpen. And maybe you decide what you're doing with Bassett. Maybe you go after Rendon or somebody like that. Maybe of that magnitude to shore up that rotation and re-sign Jacob. I think the Mets are still in position to be a World Series contender.
Mets Twitter goes into a tizzy every time the Mets lose. So, I mean, it's been a dumpster fire for what was like 63 times this year. Mm-hmm. What was so weird about this team is that they were oddly consistent from April through August. And then when they had the easiest part of their schedule in September, I mean, they didn't play badly, but they just didn't play well enough. They slipped up a couple of times against teams they should have beat. And that's what ultimately cost them. I mean, I think between April and August, they lost 3 games in a row twice. And this is a team that didn't lose more than 3 games in a row all year. But then in September, they lost 3 in a row 3 different times. The last was a backbreaker with the Braves. So it's obviously a very bitter pill to swallow, especially because, at the start of September, everyone's thinking they're going to get a bye from the wild card round. Pretty much an easy, you'd think it'd be an easy trek into the NLCS. I mean, at that point, it looked like it was more of a shot that there was going to be an NLCS in New York than an ALCS in New York, with the way the Yankees had struggled through August. But things change quickly, and that's baseball. And it was really unfortunate and very sudden, which I think is why a lot of people want to jump off a cliff right now. But I mean, this is also a familiar feeling, but it's a little bit different because that this is not like the Wilpons would settle for this. Like, oh, we made it to the playoffs. Like, we can be just mediocre now. Like Steve Cohen is probably going to be a little bit mad. He wants to spend some money. Money's burning a hole in his pocket, and they're going to go do some stuff. And they have a lot of work to do because they got a lot of people coming off the books right now, a lot of free agents, and a lot of impactful players, and mostly within the pitching staff, thinking about the rotation and the bullpen. So, I mean, they got a lot of decisions to make.
So one of the big things that I had a problem with was the way they went through with the trade deadline. I thought the Mets needed a lot more when it came to depth, and especially with the pitching itself. And the biggest thing I didn't like was not going after a lot of lefties. They only had 2 lefties on the entire team for the rest of that season. Do you think that was the biggest thing that hurt the Mets?
For the most part, he did a really good job of keeping them as fresh as possible, squeezing as much production as he could out of the bullpen. I think the thing that ended up looming larger was not getting another bat, especially once Marte went down. That was probably the biggest thing that hurt them the most, especially when you switch J.D. Davis and Darren Ruff gets 10 hits and J.D. Davis gets 8 homers at least in San Francisco. I mean, they could have really used his bat, especially once Marte went down too. So, I mean, I think that was probably the worst part, but from what we've heard from Epler and reporters and things like that is that people were asking the world of the Mets. And they didn't want to trade your top 5 prospects, which makes sense. They're trying to, win right now and also build a sustainable perennial contender. They want to be the Dodgers. That's what Steve Cohen wants. And they had to try and thread that needle. And it probably came back to bite them a little bit here. But I mean, at the end of the day, they need to win one more game somewhere, win one more game. And they couldn't do it throughout the entire month of September.
We are talking to creator of MLB Daily Dingers and Elite Sports New York writer and editor, Matt Musico. And I know Matt, as a Met writer, is probably sitting back and telling all the Met fans to just relax. The season's over, but it could be a better season next year. And they have pieces that they can build around. I really do. And I think a lot of Met fans are going crazy all over social media, thinking that they should fire Buck Showalter. And it's funny, about a few days ago, I think 48 hours ago, I read a story coming out that Steve Cohen speaks and said that Epler and Buck are safe. And I can't believe that even came out, or anybody had the thought to think that they weren't going to be safe after the season they had. But maybe next year, if they don't go further, or they fall apart in the playoffs like they did this year, that might be different, because Steve wants to win now. He said in the next 5 years he wants to see a World Series. If he thinks that Epler isn't the guy, or Showalter isn't the guy. And by the way, Brian Cashman he will become available at the end of the season. Now, he has already been told by the Yankees they're going to re-sign him. Hal said there's no way in hell they're going to lose him. But you never know when you have millions and millions of dollars flashing in front of your face. If Brian Cashman says, you know what, is it really bad? I'm a Yankee fan. I don't want to see Brian Cashman go, but is it really bad? I go over there to New York with the Mets. I'm working with my best friend in Epler. I can help that team win. I become a god, So just like Theo Epstein. What are your thoughts in the offseason reaching out to Brian Cashman? Maybe that's your acquisition. You bring in Brian Cashman, a guy that has won, with the Yankees, or maybe you go after a big bat or something of that magnitude. Where do you see the Mets going in the offseason that could surprise everybody?
Well, I mean, I don't think they're going to surprise a ton of people. Especially from the executive standpoint. I was also very shocked that the Cohen even had to come out and say that Buck and Billy were safe, because it's like, well, duh, they just won 100 games. It's the fourth time it's happened in franchise history. Of course they're safe. And yeah, like the last 2 weeks really stung, and that leaves a really sour taste in everyone's mouth. But still, it's like, from a rational standpoint, when the dust settles, you see all of the wonderful things that have happened, all the progress that's been made, all the free agent and acquisitions hit, and usually in recent history for the Mets does not happen. So, Marte and Escobar finally was able to, bring it around in September, and Canna was great, and Bassett was great. And, all those things, and Max was great until the last couple starts. They changed the culture within that clubhouse, which is one of the things that Buck is really good at. So of course he's going to stick around. Like, it's not a surprise. From an executive standpoint, I saw that they're also not going to be aggressively pursuing a president of baseball operations like they have in the last couple off seasons, partially because I think they're waiting around for David Stearns to be free from the Brewers. I think that's their golden goose that they've been holding on for. So, I mean, I feel like just thinking about Brian Cashman and Queens just feels weird. But he's got the connection with Epler. So, I mean, the Mets and the Yankees have a relationship now. So that, crazier things have happened, I guess. I mean, with regard to like which direction they're going to go, I mean, it really centers around what happens with Jake. He wants a raise from $30 million. I mean, he said the other day he doesn't know what he's going to do yet, but we all know he's going to opt out, even though he didn't have the best of finishes, because there's somebody that's going to pay him more than $30 million a year. So, I mean, that's going to really tie up what's going to happen. I just saw today that the Mets are trying to re-sign Edwin Diaz before he even hits free agency. So that's going to be like one big domino off their to-do list. But, if they sign Jake, okay, let's say it's like another $45 million for at least a couple of years, let's say, that's going to dictate what they do from there, because they still have a lot of money on the books with players coming back and players who they're paying not to play. Robinson Cano.
Yeah. At least he was traded for $1.
Bobby Bonilla.
And Brett Saberhagen. Let's not forget him.
It's
not going to put a damper on what they're going to do as much as it would in previous years, but still, like, that's $20 million that they could have used for something else. So it's like, I have a hard time thinking that the Mets are actually going to make a legit run at someone like Aaron Judge. But I mean, if they lose out deGrom, they have all this extra money. Maybe they do, and they need that big bat. So, I mean, I think that could be an interesting storyline to follow, especially if Judge actually gets the free agency. Like Hal was telling Cashman that there's no way they're going to lose him. Don't you wish you'd come out and just say that about Judge too? Or just like actually sign him to the money that he deserves? So, I mean, Cashman said the other day, he's getting a pot of gold. It's like, all right, well, are the Yankees going to give it to him? That's going to be the key. But I mean, I don't think the Mets are going to make a lot of like stunning moves. They definitely need another bat. I mean, Lindor and Pete are the anchor of that offense. And then you could throw McNeil in there too. But Pete's the lone power hitter that they have. And the Mets were middle of the road with regard to not necessarily slugging, but just hitting home runs. And we saw that bite them in the butt in the wild card series. You know, the Padres could hit homers and the Mets couldn't. So I think whether it's Judge or someone else, they need to bring somebody else in to pair with Pete. Because when Pete's not going well, then the Mets don't really score a lot of runs, which we saw this year. So they need that bat, whether it's through free agency or trying to get creative with some kind of trade, maybe get rid of James McCann, which would make everyone happy. They have a lot of decisions to make, but it's mostly within the pitching staff. What's going to happen with Jake? I mean, outside of Max, Max is the only veteran pitcher that they had in the rotation at the end of this year that is guaranteed to come back. Everyone else has some kind of option. They'll probably pick up Carlos Carrasco's option to be like the fifth starter. I think he's getting like 12 or 14 million or something like that, which would be reasonable for the type of production he can have. But, you know, they need to fill in that middle part. And David Peterson and Tyler McGill did a decent job in the opportunities that they were given, but they also haven't gone the full 162. And this is still, I mean, this past year, the oldest team in baseball. They're built to win right now. So they need to, you know, make those moves. And it's so crazy to me that even as people were saying Buck and Epler, are they on the hot seat? People don't want Jacob deGrom back. And it's like, come on, guys. It's like, it was like really like 2 bad starts. And like, even like in the starts that were bad, I guess in his last 3 regular season starts, 2 times he gave up 3 earned runs. It's like kind of normal. It's okay. He's actually human.
I'll take Jacob deGrom any day.
Yeah,
Let him come over to the Yankees.
People that will. Yeah, there are plenty of people that will.
Yankees.
So, I mean, I understand like the opportunity cost. He's in his mid-30s. You're giving him, say, like $45 million, and everyone thinks he's injury prone, although just this past, you know, calendar-ish year has been really the only time he's been injured. So, like, I get all those arguments, but I can't see Jacob deGrom anywhere else. But he's kind of like holding his cards close to his chest, so we don't really know exactly like what he's thinking outside of him saying that he thought it'd be cool to be a Met his entire career back in March. But between March and October is a long time.